Okay, guys, so I want this entire session to be really, really interactive. I'm really informal. I'm not that much older than you. Most of you guys are actually the age of like my little siblings. So I want you to feel very comfortable. I want you guys to be able to ask questions. I want you guys to control the pace of the discussion, right? Because at the end of the day, I want you guys leaving with an understanding of the topics that are really, really important to you and that are going to help you make the decision on whether or not you want to start thinking about prepping for consulting recruiting. So raise your hands, ask questions, give me ideas, and it'll be a much, much better outcome than if I'm just kind of up here talking at you. I can do that. I also know that you guys are tired. It's the end of the day and you've got tons of homework, but I really want to make sure that you guys feel comfortable kind of with the material that we cover. The good news is that all of you are capable of being great at casing. Not only do you just have the raw academic horsepower, as demonstrated by you are here, you guys are all taking very demanding majors. And those are going to give you a framework for critical and analytical thinking that I'm sure you'll find you can apply to consulting. So who knows that they want to recruit for consulting? There's no wrong answer here. Awesome. Who's considering it? Awesome. And who's just like kind of wants to feel it out, not sure what they want to do when they grow up? Cool. I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up, which is why I'm going into consulting. So fantastic. Let's start with kind of defining consulting as an undergraduate. What's important to understand about consulting is you're going to be working with clients to basically solve big, hairy, audacious problems. So you're going to be looking at strategic, operational, or organizational goals, and you're going to help solve some of the most important issues at hand in a large business. This is not working. Okay. There we go. Let me know if what I'm saying doesn't make sense with what's on screen. Okay. So you're going to work closely with a team in your consultancy. It'll generally be a manager, multiple consultants, and then one or two of you just out of undergrad, and the C-suite or your client map, generally very, very senior people within your client. And so like, what are you going to do? You could be looking at strategy. So I did a strategy case for employee engagement over the summer. You could be looking at implementation, the implementation of a new software product. You could be doing finance. How do we make sure that we are maximizing our accounts receivable? How do we make sure that we are able to properly bill customers on time? You could be doing research. So you could be tapped to understand the robotics market in 2040 in any given country. You could be doing innovation design, and there are some great firms that actually recruit specifically for that at Penn. And what makes consultancy so great is that they do truly leverage a diverse mix of skill sets and backgrounds as are needed to solve all of these types of problems. So right out of undergrad, what would you guys be doing? You guys are going to be kind of the analytical workhorse. You guys will be conducting research. You will be building models. You'll be analyzing data, and you'll be helping your team and the client come to a critical answer for the problem at hand. You must have a passion for problem solving, analytical rigor, and working with people. And I can say that in working on my team this summer, we had two people that were just out of undergrad. They were so wildly valuable. They knew every single detail of the client data. And even after my background in private equity for 5 years, I was endlessly impressed with how brilliant they call them associate consultants were. So you guys are going to be critical on every single one of your work streams. Just to give you guys a little bit of a flavor of what recruiting looks like at Penn, and if you would like to jump in, you are welcome to. These are 2017 facts and figures. But what's important to note here is that arts and sciences in Wharton tend to drive a little bit higher in terms of your internship and your full-time recruiting. What that means for you is that you're going to have a very large group of people to practice casing with in the college, in engineering, and in arts and sciences. So you should never be without someone to help you run through a case. And what I think makes Wharton and UPenn so special is the fact that you guys have access, and unprecedented access, may I add, to so many spectacular firms that cover a variety of different disciplines. So you could look at something like Alex Partners, which does a lot of restructuring and has a specialty in that, along with something like A&M, to the big strategy guys, so Bain, BCG, McKinsey, Deloitte, to people who specialize in private equity like LEK or healthcare, like Oliver Wyman, just to name a few. Parthenon does education. I could speak for hours about how fantastic each and every one of the firms that recruits here is. Okay. So, good news for you. Regardless of what your major is, you have every building block you need to be a good consultant. Because a great case leverages your analytical thought process and creative problem-solving skills to come to a concise answer to your issue at hand, right? I would say the one thing that I would make sure you do understand, and if you don't have a specialty in accounting or finance or econ, spend some time just understanding very basic accounting, finance, and econ concepts. I'm talking about what is revenue, what is gross margin, what does profit look like, and how do I calculate those things? If I'm thinking about finance, how do I calculate a valuation when I'm given a multiple? Very basic. Econ, what types of things do I need to be thinking about when I'm looking at a commodity versus a differentiated good? These are likely things that you already know, or would take you very, very little time to review. Okay, so now we're going to do a quick overview of a case. Yes?
Oh, I was wondering, for making sure that you had all the basis for like the understanding of accounting, finance, and strategy, is there a particular place that you would look to make sure you are hitting those things?
Fantastic. So you can, if you want to do the intro, you're welcome to. But we are in the midst of putting together a pretty comprehensive prep guide for all of you. We will have basic accounting, basic finance, basic econ, in terms of everything from the definition of the concept to the calculation. And then there'll be multiple cases where you'll be able to see those concepts in action and apply them. And so hopefully that will be enough. If not, there are a number of other resources, other case books, various guides that can also kind of steer you in the right direction. But it is our goal that this will be more than helpful. Yes?
How do you get access to the guide you just mentioned?
So it's currently WIP or work in process. So it will be done obviously by the end of this year. And then at the end of the program, we're going to go through kind of timeline, all of your resources and when those will kind of be available. Right now, y'all do not need to do anything. You need to focus on having a great last few weeks of school, getting your finals done, seeing your friends. If you're off to an internship or a summer job, that is your focus. This is something that you can start thinking about, end of July, August, as you start getting emails from Janie, which we'll go over later. So you will have it when you need it. Has anyone ever done a case? Awesome. So an interactive case where you read a prompt? Aha. So the cases we do in consulting are a little bit different than what you're used to kind of reading. The ones that you guys have read through like Harvard Business Review or whatever, those are going to be really, really helpful in understanding and synthesizing a lot of information on many concepts. You'll probably find that consulting cases are much shorter because you have to get through an entire consulting case in 30 to 40 minutes with a lot of interaction with your interviewer. So with that, let's do a quick overview of what these look like so you kind of know what to expect. Once again, you guys will have all of these slides. So I would rather have you guys focus on listening and thinking than like taking crazy notes. So big thing, a case interview, you're gonna walk into your interview. It could be in the career services suite, likely. It's gonna be 45 minutes. You will likely know the firm. You may know the interviewer through networking events on campus. It's going to be 45 minutes. The majority of that is going to be the case. And then they will move on to various fit questions. And those are important, but right now we're really going to focus on the case because you've got to ace the case. I think something I see people frequently stumble on is You're going to have times in a case where you ask a question and they don't have the information. You're going to have an entire branch on your framework that you're going to have to cross out because it doesn't have anything to do with the problem. And that's completely fine. That's the beauty of a case, is that you're working together with your case interviewer to solve this problem and tease out all of the important details. So throughout this 45-minute process, stay engaged, stay upbeat, stay lively. I can't tell you how important going into one of these interviews with a ton of energy is. I myself have done or given 10 cases in a row, so 10 hours of casing people. When someone comes in on interview 8 and they are exhausted and uninterested, it makes the case so much more difficult. When someone comes in on interview 9 and they're jazzed to be there and they're excited to solve a problem and they want to engage, that makes all the difference, and it becomes a fun conversation about a really difficult business problem as opposed to a case interview, and those are more memorable. So let's break down the case. I tend to think of a case interview in 4 parts. First, you have the prompt, and I asked you all to grab paper. If you don't have paper, please grab some that's down at the front so you can follow along with us, because we're going to solve the case together. The first part is the prompt. So this is interviewer led. They're going to present the business issue to you. At this point, it is your job to have your paper out, your paper set up, and your slides numbered so you guys can dive right in, and you're going to be taking notes about the qualitative and quantitative information and the issues at hand. You need to listen intently, because you will need to not only repeat the summary back, but ask clarifying questions so you can ensure that you are 100% ready to go and understand the world in which you're operating. Does this all make sense to y'all? Cool. Then we're going to move on to clarifying questions. So this is the chance for you to understand the world in which you are operating. You don't need to understand the 2013 depreciation numbers for the company you're looking at. You're trying to understand, okay, I am working with a grocery store. Are they more like a Whole Foods, so high end, a ton of like fresh ingredients, hot bar? Or are they more like a Food Lion or a Publix or a Kroger? Those are 2 different types of grocery store experiences. It's important that you kind of understand where you are so you can kind of walk yourself through the business as you go through the case. So this is really focused on how do the dollars go into the business and how do the dollars go out. Don't start the case and move forward until you understand that basic business model. If you don't know how they make money and you don't know what they're spending it on, you're not going to get very far in the case. And that's completely fine. You could get an industry like I did in my final round at Bain, where I knew nothing about car insurance market. Right? So I took the time to understand what were the key levers in the business, why did I need to ask this, and how am I going to be able to improve this business by understanding the basic business model. I mean, I had friends that had like crazy like coal mining cases, right? And they were from tech, but they asked the right questions so they could move on and really nail the framework. So when we move on to the case, there's multiple parts within the case. You're going to start with a framework. We're going to work through that together. You will likely have exhibits that'll be based on questions you ask, both within your framework and conversations you have with the interviewer. And then you might have to brainstorm. So get really, really creative when we start thinking of other alternatives or potential ways to improve a business as you drive towards your conclusion. You're going to end with a recommendation, and so that's a concise takeaway for your interviewer to understand where should our client go next. All of this is going to be presented to them. You're going to be going back and forth across the table. And so you know that you're prepared when these cases stop feeling like cases where you're trying to apply a specific framework, where you're focused on making sure that your mechanics are right. And it just becomes a fun conversation talking about a topic that you're really, really excited about. You should be excited about casing if you want to go into consulting. You should be excited about business if you want to go to consulting. You should love solving problems. I have fun casing. Okay, so before we start and we dive into one of these things, casing is a totally novel way of thinking, right? y'all have not done this in class. You all have the building blocks to excel at it, right? So it's going to take deliberate practice. You don't need to memorize frameworks when we send you all of the resources. You need to understand why they're in place and how to think in an organized manner like that and apply them more broadly. There's no magic number of cases. The last thing I want you guys doing is getting caught up with, my friend did 70 and I've only done 10, okay? For some people, 10 is the perfect number and they are ready to go. For other people, like myself, 70 made me feel comfortable, right? I was an athlete before Wharton and undergrad. I needed the practice to know that I had put the work in to feel comfortable. For me, it was mental, right? Some of you might be at 30. I would say 5 is probably not good. But it's all about deliberately practicing and improving until you feel that you are good. But your end goal should be able to walk in there confidently and be able to tackle anything. So now we're going to walk through an example case. But before we jump in, here's a gentle reminder. You must set aside time for deliberate practice. So it's going to take you weeks to get here, and your end goal is to be confident and have a great conversation. You must be deliberate, you must track your mistakes, and you must work on your weaknesses so you can ace the case. So as we do this, don't feel overwhelmed. Stop me, ask questions, push things that don't make sense to you, because this is an illustration of how my first case went. I'm not kidding, y'all. My first case was an airport case, and it basically centered around optimizing gates for various airlines. I forgot that an airport has gates. So you can imagine how great that went for 45 minutes. But then 70 later, I know that airports have gates, and I'm very, very confident getting through a case, right? So you can absolutely go from trash fire like I did to multiple offers. Okay, so I wanted to give you a case that you will feel comfortable with, right? Because before we can tackle something super, super complicated, we need to learn how to think like a consultant in everyday life. And it's going to be something that I'm going to task you with when we walk away from here. So I know some of you were disappointed. You thought that we were going to be like solving an offshoring issue in a foreign country and trying to decrease margins. No. This is a case that actually most MBAs freak out when we give them because we are used to the business cases and we forget that we need to be able to apply this to everyday life. So you're about to solve something that my MBAs in December got really nervous doing. So, as if we were in a real case, I'm going to read you the prompt. I'm going to ask you guys to take notes like you would in a real case. I need a marker. In terms of best practices, and you'll see this in the book, when we set up a framework, you can make it your own. However, generally, you'll see a line on the side of the paper, 2 boxes, and then a large open white space. What I'm going to ask you to do is put your quantitative stuff up here, and then your qualitative observations down here. And then write the question that I ask you here and leave a ton of room so we can work through a framework together. Okay? I'll wait till everyone's good with paper. If we need more paper, I'll run out. I just steal it from the printer. That's recorded. Okay, we're good with paper and such. Actually, great call. I usually have my paper landscape. If you don't, it's fine. But if you're going to go into a mock interview with career management, with another student, with someone like myself, always have that paper out, have your pens out. It's very, very critical that you show us that you're ready to go. That being said, your friend Matt is considering buying a coffee maker. He has a $200 maximum budget, but as a new Penn grad, he would be happy to spend less than that. He has retained your consulting skills to help him make this decision. I'll give you guys a couple seconds to finish your notes. Okay. Who would like to echo the prompt back to me? You don't have to be brave. This one's easy. Great.
Matt is a new pen grad looking for a new coffee maker, and his budget is $2 million for the loan sign.
Okay, and what is our question? What are we helping him with?
Looking for that new coffee maker.
Yeah, so it's how should he think about it, right? That's what we're gonna help him with. Perfect. Great. For a first time, that's awesome. I saw a wall of words as a former math major and was like, wow, that's a lot of English. In reality, you would not have the prompt in front of you. It would be read to you. It will get easier the more and more you do. You will understand kind of how they are set up and what you need to be writing down. So great. Now we're going to go to prompt clarification. As I said, the best thing you can do is understand the world that you're operating in, so you need to be listening intently and taking your notes. You did a great job repeating the summary, and that's going to be critical as you establish your rapport with the interviewer and you make sure that you're on the right track. This is your chance before you do your framework to clear up any of those questions. Yes, his name is Matt. What is his budget? You really, really need that to get through the rest of the case. Right? So don't go forward unless you need, don't go to your framework until you've done this. Right? So now we're going to move to the next step, right? We looked at the prompt. Now we're going to clarifying questions. I actually find, clarifying questions to be the most difficult. So before we do that, is everyone good with the prompt? Yes? Okay. I know y'all are tired, trust me. I've been going since 8:30 and I'm old. So, clarifying questions allow you to understand the scope of the issue at hand, but you don't want to go too specific, right? So I generally start this by creating a comparable. So for those finance people, think a comparable company. So if the example was, your client is Pharmacy Co., a chain of pharmacies located on street corners throughout the US, I would be like, great. Just so I'm clear, I'm thinking about this like CVS, or I'm thinking about this like Rite Aid. Can I use that comp to ground my thinking throughout the case? They'll generally say yes or no. If it's something like a grocery store and I say, hey, great, I have a Whole Foods right near me. I'm thinking about this like Whole Foods. Do they have a differentiated higher end model? And they could say yes or no. If they say no, I'll be like, okay, great. Well, my hometown in South Carolina, we always go to Publix. Publix is a great grocery chain. Everything is reasonably priced. They're known for their customer service. Is this more in line with how we're thinking about our client? Yes. Point being, you're going to have a different set of concerns, factors, and potential problems in Publix than you would in Whole Foods, right? And I know a lot of y'all probably have not grocery shopped yet, so, but I bet you've all been to Whole Foods. So, thinking about clarifying questions, right? So, I always think about this as an iceberg. We want to stay above the water. We do not want to dive down. If you dive down into the water, they will shut you down and not tell you. So this is stuff like, is this an industry-wide trend if profit's declining and I'm an airline? Right? If it's an industry-wide trend, I'm going to want to look at fuel prices. I'm going to want to look at the economy and macro factors. If they tell me actually it's just specific to our client, that might help me understand the types of drivers that I should be looking at. Big one, why are we doing this? Translates into what is the firm's objective? Are they trying to maximize profit? Are they trying to curb attrition? Are they trying to launch a new product? Are they trying to buy a coffee maker, right? All of this is very, very important. We don't need to dive into the margins of their toaster business segment, right? If they're like a Honeywell. That's not where we do this. We just try to understand our world. Oh, shoot. Okay. With that said, let's brainstorm some clarifying questions for Matt. There are only good questions. Yes?
Does he currently own a coffee maker? And if so, like, what's his preference?
Perfect. Okay. Yes.
How often does he drink coffee, every day or every week?
You guys are good. Okay. Who else? Yes.
Why does he want to buy a coffee maker?
Awesome. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah.
If you would want it to just make coffee or be one of those machines who make lattes and
Awesome.
other renditions.
You guys are fantastic. Okay. Those are all perfect. And I think actually all of what I have on here. So, information for you all to know. And I would suggest we write it down in our qual and our quant section. Right? You guys hit it right on the head. Why is Matt buying a coffee maker now? Well, Matt will be an investment banking analyst and has heard rumors of long hours and late nights. I think they get protected weekends though. He feels that he will need the caffeine to get through the dreaded first year. It's real, guys. So, what type of coffee maker is Matt considering? To y'all's question. So Matt's maximum budget is $200, which you all know. Thus, many of the fancy barista-style coffee makers are out of his budget. So does Matt have a favorite coffee drink? You guys also hit this nail on the head. So Matt wants to be able to make standard drip cups of coffee with his coffee maker. He'll occasionally order a latte. So standard drip cups of coffee, that would include like, you know, the pull down, make a K-cup. That could be the drip coffee that you've probably seen your parents make. I'll give you all a second to get that written down. Yes?
So for this question specifically, would getting into like the specific coffee models be too much for a clarifying question? So like, there's an espresso machine versus K-cups, like the pods are gonna cost differently. Like would that be too specific for a clarifying?
That's a perfect question, right? So that is case specific, right? And we're going to get into that when we start working through our framework, which is actually the next thing we're gonna do. So I'm super glad you asked that. Right now, we're just trying to understand like Matt. What does Matt want? What is he gonna buy? What is his budget? Why is he doing this? Motivation is very, very important. It's a fantastic question. So now we're gonna brainstorm. How are y'all thinking about Matt buying a coffee maker? How would you guys think about buying a coffee maker? How many of you have bought a coffee maker? Whew, okay. So walk me through how y'all were thinking about it. Awesome.
I feel like for me a big thing was like ease of like cleaning and cleanliness, especially as like an investment banking analyst. Like that would probably be a consideration for Matt as well if he's not got time to clean his coffee maker that often.
Awesome. I'm gonna start writing this down, right? So he's definitely got a time issue. He's definitely got a cleaning issue. Who knows? His roommates could be absolutely gross and use it and then never clean it. Okay? Like that?
I considered like space and the quantity that it was brewing. Like if he has a small
Yeah.
apartment or if he actually has roommates who would be drinking coffee as well.
I love the idea of space, right? Is he in New York where he maybe has this much counter space, or is he in Chicago where he has more? Same thing, quantity that he's drinking. That's all fantastic. Yes.
Let's not talk about warranty, because what if your coffee maker came home just one day and it broke?
Awesome. Okay. Yep.
I think ease of use and functionality would be really important.
You guys are thinking like consultants. Okay. I saw hands over here. Oh, well, we'll go back. Yep.
Has used one before, like experience with past one?
Great. I will tell you that I bought a standard coffee maker in undergrad and it made coffee all over my counter. Yes.
Maybe if he has like a color preference or like exterior design preference.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yep.
So where he's gonna buy it, so if you go to Amazon, there's a lot of options, but if you go, I don't know, to your local Walmart, there's only a few.
And how important is that optionality to him, right? And is he even close to a Walmart? Or is he going to have to buy it on Amazon, right? Okay, you guys did an awesome job. So these are all going to be important as we walk through this case. So you guys inherently understand the types of things that we need to be thinking about when we are making a decision like this. What we're now going to do is figure out how to organize our thoughts in a manner that's going to make it really, really easy to start diagnosing the problem and working through it with whomever you're interviewing with. So this is a sample framework. You guys got all the high points. So a good framework seeks to answer a question in a very organized and tactical manner. There's a couple different ways we can think through this in business, right? Should he buy a coffee maker? So in this case, we're buying a coffee maker, but it could be you're a business thinking about investing in a very expensive piece of equipment. You could think about this in make versus buy. So am I insourcing my coffee making or am I outsourcing my coffee making to Pret or Starbucks, right? And so you guys hit on each one of these buckets. What are my costs? What are my benefits to me? Whether that be a better experience, whether that be an ease of use, whether that be a time, right? You guys got all of that. And what are my risks? So cleaning the coffee maker, right up there, you guys got that. What about the quality? What type of coffee does he want? Is it going to give him enough variety? Is he going to drink too much coffee? Who knows? But by creating frameworks, you're able to work through the problem a little bit more, I guess, in an organized manner. So I want to walk through all the buckets and talk a little bit about why they're important. Do you guys think that that would be helpful? Okay, we're going to go outside in. So this is a make versus buy decision, right? So either he's going to make it at home, or he's going to buy it at Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, or Pret. Do we kind of all agree that those are his kind of alternatives? Right? He's going to make it or he's going to buy it. Now, what's really important here? The costs. That's going to be a huge driver of this, both buying the machine, your fixed cost to purchase the machine, and then your daily variable costs, right? And those costs differ in the make versus buy decision. We're going to walk through the fixed costs, we're going to walk through the variable costs, and we're going to walk through a break-even calculation together so we can firm up what those look like in a real case. When we start thinking about benefits, you guys got so many of these, and this by no means is the right answer. There are 100 different ways to slice this. There are many other things that we could have put on here. This is how I was thinking through it. You guys got even more, right? So what are my benefits, both on a make versus buy? One could be more convenient, but one offers me the ability to be social. More counter space, as you guys had said. But now what are my risks, right? To every decision, there are risks and there are key trade-offs. So now I have to clean the coffee maker. Maybe the quality is not as good because I'm using old K-cups. Now I have less variety because I'm not going to be able to have a latte or a mocha or a frappuccino every day. But maybe if I'm buying, am I going to make unhealthy choices? Am I going to be hurting the environment because I'm not using a reusable mug? I'm using plastic straws. Am I going to have to wait in line? So if we think about this in another business application, right? Let's say the prompt was, you are a multinational CPG considering buying a new factory overseas to vertically integrate the manufacturing process. This thought process still applies, right? It's an in-source versus an outsourcing decision with a lot of key things to think about. And then I want to draw your attention to, there's also a large alternatives bucket, right? He doesn't have to have coffee. He could have Red Bull. He could have 5 Hour Energy. He could drink chocolate milk and load himself up on Skittles for energy, right? There's a lot of other things he could be doing. Does anyone have questions about this before we move on? Yes?
So when you like make this matrix, would you put that on your paper, or is it something you just kind of talk through? Or like how did you kind of systematically get from the brainstorm that we did to this kind of organized matrix?
Yeah, so a couple things, all great questions. There are kind of frameworks as you start to work through these questions that you will recognize that work and work for you. Now, every problem has multiple frameworks, but for me, when I'm thinking about make versus buy, in-source versus outsource type questions, this is what generally works for me. And in experience in doing a lot of cases, I found that this is the best way for me to think through these problems. When you start seeing it a lot, you'll basically create your own language and way of solving these. Within the deck that y'all will get through Career Services, there are sample frameworks, right? That show you, okay, like here are the things that we've always thought about, or I've always thought about when I am looking at a profit case with declining profits, right? Here's how Wharton thinks about structuring that case. Here's 2 different examples of how you could structure it. So you'll start to build that skill set. So this was same thing. I had done this quite a bit, and so this would be how I would have structured it. It takes practice, right? Your first ones, you're gonna miss things, and then you're gonna go, oh, okay, I missed variable cost and I missed break even. So I'm going to write on my error log, okay, work on identifying when you need to think about variable costs, work on identifying when you need to think about break even. The next time you see something like this, you're gonna be, okay, I need to look at variable costs, I need to look at break even, right? In terms of what your paper looks like, this stuff wouldn't be here, but I didn't make the height requirement to draw up here. Your framework would be here. Okay. So now that we've looked at this framework, where on the framework do y'all want to start? There are no wrong answers. What do you think is the most important bucket? Like, what's the big lever in this entire decision? Cost. Perfect. Always focus on the big levers. What's going to move the needle? Y'all are never going to be working on insignificant problems for these companies, right? And so you need to understand that and then think about what are the key drivers that are really going to make a difference in this problem. So y'all are right. So when I think about costs, what's going to like really tip the scales for me when I'm thinking about making my own coffee and investing in a coffee maker and buying my coffee every morning? Okay.
Maybe how much you save in the long run.
Perfect. So we call that doing a break-even analysis. So when does my coffee buying habit at Starbucks equal me having just bought one and then continuing to buy my pods or my bag of coffee and filters? Great. Excuse me, I'm doing this on 2 different computers. Okay, so here's what the interviewer is going to tell you. Matt has decided that he does not want to drink Red Bull or any coffee alternatives. So at the bottom of your prompt, you can just cross alternatives out. Not something you need to think about right now. Instead, he's going to continue to think through his make versus buy a coffee maker decision. Some food for thought. After graduation, Matt's mom gave him a coupon to Bed Bath & Beyond. Using her $20 off coupon, Matt could purchase a Keurig for $100. Yes?
Sorry, just like a very basic, this might be a stupid question, but
No.
I thought from the prompt, like he was definitely gonna buy a new coffee maker, so like what from the prompt we had taken to know that like he was considering continuing to purchase like from Starbucks, let's say?
Well, so he's thinking about buying it, right?
Okay.
So it's always important to understand what else could happen. So it's just as important to understand if he says yes versus if he says no.
Okay, so you have to like weigh both sides.
Absolutely, great question. And then I also threw alternatives in there because let's say he's like, yes, I definitely need to supplement my energy after pulling late nights. It's not limited limited to just coffee. We're lucky enough that we have a lot of other options. Fantastic question. And there are no silly or stupid questions, so don't start with that. Yes.
So at this point, are we doing our frame or is this still clarifying questions?
So this is just additional information. So as we go through a case, many times your interviewer is going to continue to give you information to push your analysis and your thinking forward. This is an example of that. So through this, I know that the bottom alternatives is crossed off. I'm not going to worry about it. I also know that it's likely when we think about where he's buying, he's probably going to buy it at Bed Bath & Beyond because it's a really nice coupon. Right? That's important to know that he can buy a Keurig for $100 and it's now in his price range. Generally, they hover around $200, so this is great for him. Okay, so next, to your point, right? We want to know how long would it take Matt to break even if he was to purchase Starbucks coffee every morning? That's our new question. So generally, we would go to a new piece of paper. We don't need to do that. You guys are welcome to flip it over as we work through this. I don't expect you to know how to calculate break even, okay? But now I'm going to make y'all brainstorm. How do you think we should calculate it? Let's brainstorm the units that we're going to use and the inputs that you think you are going to need. I'll give you guys a second just to think. And we're going to do it together. Okay, so when we're thinking about break even between buying a coffee maker and making our coffee every morning and buying our coffee at Starbucks every morning, what do we need to know? Yes.
We need the price of Starbucks and the price of Kinko's.
Perfect. So let's give our cues. Is our cup of coffee. And we need price of S-Bucks. Price per K-Cup. Or standard cup of coffee. What else do we need to know? What do we have actually? Yes.
With a break-even analysis, is that just, are we getting an outputs of like after X number of cups, or are we like after so many months, when is it gonna break even?
You're gonna see that in a hot second. You can do it either way, right? It's gonna depend on the units that they give you, right? And you know, let's say that they give you, you're gonna break even after, this is not the answer by the way, 100 cups. Well, then you say, okay, great, like I would like a time frame because I'm considering the warranty on the machine. How many cups of coffee is Matt gonna drink in a day? The answer is like, he's gonna drink 3 cups of coffee in a day. Okay, so we're looking at just over a month of coffee usage. What's the warranty? The warranty is 2 years. Okay, great, we're covered. All right, so that's how you can kind of keep pushing that thought process along. Fantastic question. Okay, so what else do we need on our inputs?
Oh, he just put us in the, if he would drink coffee 3 times a day, that means when he's in office, he can't really go home to make coffee.
Great. Yep. There we go.
Which, following up on that, he would probably have to purchase some type of storage unit for coffee if he's bringing it from home.
Okay. So this is gonna be is this one-time cost or is it repeated?
Well, I'm assuming if he buys a thermos or something, he would reuse it.
Okay. Perfect. And yes, you could buy like those reusable or the disposable cups, so completely good question, yeah.
Also, don't you need to know like inputs, like milk, let's say, if he needs to buy it at home?
Yeah, so I guess we want the all-in price of a K-Cup coffee, right? So you have sugar, Splenda, Coffee Mate, etc. And then we're missing one other big one-time cost that I gave y'all.
Cost of investment, which is $100 for the Keurig.
Exactly. Dare try to spell Keurig in front of all y'all. Okay. Now, let's consider what we have here. Is how we're thinking about break even. And it's applicable whether you're making an investment decision, whether you're thinking about one-time startup costs, like buying your thermos, or you're contemplating that large one-time cost. So in this case, it's buying a coffee maker. It could be opening a factory. It could be buying a license to be able to make products with someone else's logo. There's a million different ways you could do this. Does everyone kind of understand this formula? Have we seen it? Are we familiar? Do you want to walk through it, or do you want to see it in action first? Okay. Does everyone know what fixed costs are, or should we go through those? Okay, let's go through fixed costs. So, fixed costs are your, in this case, one-time costs, right? It's only happening once. When we go into other problems, fixed costs are things like your electricity bill, your rent, things that are not going to change with the quantity of your output. So in this case, it's going to be $100 for a coffee maker. Then we have to start thinking of our variable costs. So here, our two variable costs are our cost of our Starbucks cup and our cost of our Keurig cup of coffee. Does that make sense to everyone? Cool. I gotta skedaddle. I'm running behind. Y'all are asking great questions. Okay. So here's what I'm gonna tell you. Cost of Keurig is $100. The daily cost of the K-Cup, milk, and Splenda is $1, to your point. The daily cost of a Starbucks coffee is $3, and Matt drinks 5 coffees per week. We all like to know what is the break-even number of coffees. To your question, how many weeks will this take to break even? And is there anything else we should consider based on the information they've given you? I'm going to give you all a second to try the calculation, and then we can walk through it. Yes?
When it says cost of daily, so it's not the cost per cup?
Think about this as the cost per cup, his quantity. I'm assuming here that he's having 1 coffee per day. So that's a great question to your interviewer, right? It's not that you don't understand it, right? I wasn't clear, and you needed that information and asked that question to move on. So fantastic way of doing that. Okay. Walk through calculation. Super easy math. Be ready for things like algebra in these types of cases. The math in casing is not difficult. You're going to be focused on your mental math and those skills. It's really just used as a broader analytical tool to keep driving your conclusions. So we have $100 for the Keurig times $1 per cup of coffee. We could also use a Q if that makes you feel more comfortable. Equals $3 for every Starbucks times the number of coffees. So algebra, X is going to equal 50 coffees. And at 5 coffees a week, he's going to be at 10 weeks to break even. Okay? So you guys have already mentioned it. I know that I could buy my Keurig and I could break even in 10 weeks, or I could keep buying Starbucks. What else do I need to know to help me make this decision? Time. So how's that?
Like how much time you take to buy the Starbucks, like buy the maker and also make the coffee, especially these very time sensitive.
That's a that could absolutely be another piece of this case when we look at time saved. I did not write the case for that, but absolutely valid. Yes.
How much do you factor in opportunity costs? Like, if it takes them like 30 minutes to make coffee, they could be making, I don't know, $20 in those like that type.
So once again, it's gonna depend on how the case was written. That absolutely could have been something that we're trying to gauge. So we're trying to market size the cost of him making the coffee versus the cost of him waiting in line and buying the coffee in addition to the cost we discussed. 100%. So here's where your interviewers sometimes can go, great point, unfortunately, we don't have that information. It is not that you asked an incorrect question. You probably asked a great question, it just happens to be that that's not how I wrote the case. And frankly, I think those are better ideas than how I wrote the case. Yes?
I guess which coffee like he likes better? Like does he like to taste Starbucks better or is he satisfied with the K-Cup?
That's fantastic, right? This case could take a turn and we're starting to look at customer satisfaction and taste preferences. I could give you a bunch of consumer reviews with 5-star ratings of Starbucks versus K-Cup or consumer satisfaction. I didn't do that, but absolutely could have done that, yeah.
Maybe like how long is he working at his position? Because if he's only drinking coffee because he anticipates long hours, is that going to last longer than 10 weeks? Because you want to see how, like, is it going to go past 10 weeks for him to not only break even, but also to benefit?
Great. So with this information, it's critical that we know what does 10 weeks entail. So in my mind, great, I've got 10 weeks. Does this coffee maker last 10 weeks? So that would be my question to the interviewer. The interviewer would tell you, yes, the Keurig lasts 2 years under normal use. Oh, I lost my thing. Oh, can you guys hear me? I'm sorry. There we go. Okay. So now we're wrapping up. What should Matt do? Just like prompts, there's a million different ways we can slice and dice this apple. What's important is that you give your interviewer a key takeaway, you have a solidly supported conclusion, you understand the risks inherent in purchasing the coffee maker, which you guys did such a fantastic job at highlighting before we went into the warranty question. And then you understand what we can look at to help mitigate those risks and make Matt a little bit more comfortable with his decision to buy a coffee maker. So I'll do a quick wrap-up conclusion for y'all. So I'd be like, great, I would turn my paper towards the interviewer with my framework. You may or may not have time to write this down. This might have to come from the top of your head. So it would be great. I think that Matt should use his mother's coupon and buy the coffee maker for 2 key reasons. Matt will break even versus alternatives in 10 weeks. And given the coffee maker's useful life, he should more than break even. It seems completely attainable. But the risks of purchasing a coffee maker include Matt's inability to access coffee while he was at work. Someone already mentioned that. A change in his drinking preferences. Maybe he will get sick of this after or before 10 weeks. And his ability to purchase K-Cups while working. Is he going to do it through Amazon? Is he going to go to Publix? Is he going to go to Whole Foods? But how can Matt get more comfortable with this, right? So he could understand if the bank provides free coffee. He could look at different K-Cup options. There's Swiss Miss, there's Lavazza, you can have a chai. And he could utilize a grocery delivery service like Amazon for all of his K-Cup needs. And that would be a good conclusion and wrap up. Does anyone have any questions on this? We have a little bit more in terms of market sizing. And we've got 30 minutes, so yes.
I have a question. At the beginning, as you're kind of game planning, how long should you take before you, like, while you're working through the problem?
Okay, so when we do frameworks, fantastic question. When you're at the beginning of this, the prompt, that's going to take 30 seconds to read. You're probably going to take a minute and a half for clarifying questions, depending on the length of the prompt and how much it entails. You will then do your framework. The kind of guideline is about 1:30 to 2 minutes is probably appropriate for taking time to do your framework and collect your thoughts. Pretty much after that, people will start losing interest. It's a really long prompt, yes, you can go a little bit over. For something like this, 1:30 to 2 minutes. Abbreviations are key, symbols are key. You'll start to develop that language for yourself as you do it more and more and more. Yes?
when you're creating your framework in those like 1.5 to 2 minutes, are you still like engaging with the interviewer, or is it like quiet time for you to like?
Great question. It generally is quiet time. It'll be, your paper will be facing you, and then when you want to present it, flip it around to the interviewer, walk them through your buckets. I'd be like, great. So when we're thinking about how Matt should buy a coffee maker, I'll present it to you. When we're thinking about Matt buying a coffee maker, I'm thinking about this in 2 buckets. He has the option to make or buy. And then when I'm thinking through his make or buy decision, I'm concerned about the costs, benefits, or risks. And then I'll dive into, when I think about cost on the make side, I'm really concerned about his fixed cost of purchase. And then his variable cost, how much does a K-Cup cost every day? My dad always complains that it's ridiculously expensive. And then, when is he breaking even? But then with Starbucks, it's clearly a much higher variable cost on a daily basis, but he has no working capital, right? He didn't have to buy the coffee maker, but he might be tempted to snacks and add-ons and whipped cream. And so it could be unhealthy, and it could cost him more money. Then I go to the benefits, and you'll start walking through each one of those. Any other questions? Yes.
Is the framework always so qualitative and then you get numbers after?
Yes, great question. So generally, this might have been a little bit light on the one, with the time we have. You might get things like, they are a $100 million revenue company, profits are declining, they have operations in 7 countries. You will then work through number synthesis as you get through the case. And the thing is, some cases are highly quantitative, some cases are not at all. I had everything from a healthcare private equity case when I was going through interviews to a new product launch. And those had very different levels of thought. You also have different levels of exhibits. You could have exhibits that are something like customer reviews, right? Like how does it taste versus, average coffee consumption per capita. And you're going to be doing different calculations as a result. Any other questions? Okay, so something that I would encourage you all to start doing is a market sizing analysis. It's going to help you start thinking in a very organized manner. And these were in many of the cases I did as an MBA and will likely be in the cases that you do, or some of the cases you do as an undergrad. It's a critical skill and it's something you can do so easily because opportunities to market size are all around you. So, okay. We are going to think about market sizing. There are 2 approaches to market sizing. There's a top-down and a bottoms-up market sizing. So a top-down, you're thinking of it as a funnel. You start with your largest population, and then you work to refine. So if I'm asking you how many McDonald's cheeseburgers are sold in the US every single day, I'm going to start with the US population. Bottoms up, so you start with your smallest unit, and you start to work your way up. So McDonald's cheeseburgers, okay, my local store by Penn, I'm going to make an assumption that they have 100 customers an hour. They, on average, sell cheeseburgers to 50 of those customers, and they're open 20 hours a day. And then you can start to extrapolate up. Well, that means there are X number of McDonald's in Pennsylvania, there are Y number of McDonald's in the US, they're open these many hours, etc., etc. Does that make sense? Because we're going to try one in a hot second. You good? Yes.
So, for that type of sizing, is it important the actual numbers you pull up or just the way you're thinking about it? Like, if you were saying that there were 100 customers an hour, I mean, it might be 150 during a rush time and then at 10 p.m., 25.
You guys are going to be so So great question. So a lot of these market sizing, there are some numbers that you should know. So we generally use the American population at 300 million. we estimate that there are 3 people in every family, so there's 100 million families. If you're going to be interviewing in international offices, there are also kind of international benchmarks that you might want to be familiar with. But you, by and large, and we'll do it in a second, will be responsible for your assumptions and then defending your assumptions. What I will tell you before we dive into one, use numbers that you can easily calculate using mental math and mental math tricks, right? There may be 1,972 people in Huntsman Hall at 9 a.m., but let's round to 2,000 because that's much, much easier. They might ask you to defend your assumption, but always stick to the easier numbers. Great question. Any other questions? Now we're going to work through some examples. So one of the keys to a great case is staying case specific. They want to see that you are constantly thinking about the client, the company, or the issue at hand. And so I find the best way to do this is really visualize the business or the scenario that you're working through, right? We just worked through buying a coffee maker. And I also try to create a comp, right? We had talked about Whole Foods, Publix, CVS. And this really makes the cases, at least for me, completely come alive. And I make sure that they're very similar to kind of the client's issue in question, the client's company in question. So we're gonna try some comps right now before we do these. I would like to know, my client is Airline Co. What are some comps for Airline Co? How are you thinking about Airline Co?
What's a comp?
Comparable company. So, my client is Airline Co. They're a long-haul carrier with a national and international set of flights. They have a great first-class dual cabin service, assuming everyone's been on a plane. And they fly a variety of jets. What's the first one you think of? Yes.
United.
Perfect. What's another one? Yes.
American.
Perfect. We keep pushing y'all. What's another one? Yes.
Delta?
Perfect. What would not be a good airline comp if we're thinking about dual class? Yeah.
Spirit?
Brilliant. Frontier. Not hating on them. They're just a different type of airline, right? So you're going to think about Frontier and American differently. Why? Yes.
Value propositions.
Yeah. Different markets, yeah.
They operate in different markets.
Yep. Anyone else over here? Yeah.
I guess they just have different like business plan and objectives.
Exactly. Right, so another one would be Southwest. Southwest has one class of service. They have one type of plane. They do a 737. They have a more limited, if they do international flight plan, whereas United is known for international. You can pretty much get anywhere on United, American, or Delta, or any other major legacy carrier, right? So fantastic job of setting that up. In terms of take-home homework for you, because you guys just did such a good job, think about grocery stores. Think about fast casual salad chains. There's 3 of them around here, right? That's how you start to really immerse yourself in the case, and you guys did a great job. So we're going to work through this on the board, and we're going to start with my question to you, a top-down approach to how many people are in Huntsman Hall at 10:30 a.m. And I'm going to have to do the math, so please be kind to me when you give me estimates. Okay, yes.
So you start with there's 10,000 undergrads, and I don't know how many MBAs. So let's say there's like 2,000 a year, I have no idea.
Okay,
So
great.
that's like the total amount of people plus faculty, I guess, and staff.
Okay,
Let's estimate that at like 300.
okay, you're getting ahead of me. Yes,
Sorry.
people. Oh, no, oh, sorry, this is great. Okay,
So undergrads plus MBAs plus staff, and maybe some wiggle room for people that are visiting.
great. Okay, so for my ease of calculation, there could be 342 faculty and 140 staff and 5 visitors. That's fine. I'm going to use 500. Why? Because 12.5K is half of 25,000, and it's a lot easier to calculate things on 25,000 and divide by 2. Okay? If y'all really want to punish me, we can use another number. Great. So we know that there are 12,500 people that could potentially be on campus, right? So where do we want to take it next? Do they all have class at 10:30? Are they skipping class? Are they sleeping in because there was a frat party the night before? What's going on, guys? Are they MBAs and they just don't show up to class? Yes.
Like what day of the week it is, weekday or weekend?
Okay, great question. Okay, so let's assume that this is a Tuesday. So the MBAs are in class, the undergrads are in class, the faculty, staff are here, and they're still doing campus visits, so there are visitors. Yes?
Well, we can assume that all the staff and faculty are here.
Yeah.
Because they should be.
Perfect. Okay, so now we're gonna look at, does attendance work? Can we go on that? Yes.
Can we ask questions at this point?
Oh, yeah, we are literally just trying to figure this out together.
Okay, like can we ask like how many like classes are in session right now and like what's the average like size?
So sometimes I'll give this information. This is an open-ended market sizing, which is the exercise I'm gonna encourage you all to do. So in this case, you guys are coming up with every single assumption like we just did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, great question. So now we wanna start with, we're gonna assume that we have, 100% of faculty and staff, but that does not account for the number of undergrads and MBAs that are in class. Right, so what variables do we have? We have attendance and then we have time of class. How are you guys thinking through how many classes are at 10:30? You know what, let's just do attendance. It's open-ended. What percentage of undergrads do you think have class at 10:30 a.m.? There's no wrong answer, y'all. Yes?
20%.
20% of undergrads have class at 10:30 a.m. Great. Okay. Awesome. What percentage of MBAs have class, not are going to class, actually have class? I would probably tell you it's darn close to 100%. It's probably not. Yeah.
I have a question. So for the undergrads at 10,000, are those one undergrads or total 10 undergrads?
That's total 10.
Okay, that's total 10.
Because
So 20%
also
of class.
takes classes here.
So yeah, have class in Huntsman.
Then I feel like it's less than 20% at this point.
Okay, you guys, you know what? They will ask you and push you on your assumptions. So what do we want to bring it down to instead? 15? Remember, I have to do this in my head. 10%? Cool. Okay. So let's calculate this. So 10% of 10,000 is 1K. 100% of 2,000 is 2K. 500 faculty and staff. We have 3.5K have the potential to be in Huntsman, right? What's important about the potential? Not everyone goes to class. I don't advocate for that, but it's the truth. So, what's our next layer here? We know they have class in Huntsman. Yes.
Attendance.
Attendance, perfect. Okay, what do you think the undergrad attendance rate is? Oh, you guys are laughing. I'm gonna let you guys do the MBA one too. Okay, what do you guys, just throw out a number. There's no wrong answer. 60%? Decent. What do you think the MBA is? What is it? 50%? 30?
15.
All possible, depending on the class. Let's use, okay, this is where I'm gonna back into finding myself a number that's not awful. Right now, we're gonna say that all of the I'm gonna say, you know what? I'm gonna assume that important, someone speaking. So right now, I know that I have 600 undergrads. I don't know how many MBAs. And I have 500 faculty and staff. What type of number, so right now I have 1,100 people, is going to get me to kind of an easier to use number? Like, let's say 1,500 people, right? I don't want to be doing calculations with 1,300 people if the next step in the question is, oh, okay, and oh, by the way, I have 12 rooms, how many people are in each room, right? What is the percentage fill rate of the rooms? So, what reasonable attendance number is going to get me to 1,500? Right? So 10% of 2K is 200. Another be 20% attendance rate, right? Am I wrong? Am I right?
You're right.
Yeah, okay, cool. It's no longer. Okay, so we're gonna say 20% of MBAs are in class. This is completely possible. Okay, so now we have 1,500 students in Huntsman at 10:30 a.m. And now your interviewer is like, y'all are so smart and you're so good at this. We're going to push this one step further. I'm ready on this. Okay. I want to know, what is the percentage fill rate of each classroom? Assuming all classrooms have an equal number of students, so it could be classes that have MBAs and undergrads in them. How are we thinking about that? We're funneling down to where we're sitting right now, yes?
How many classrooms exist in Houston?
Great, how are we gonna look at that?
How many per floor?
Awesome. How do we wanna think about it?
There's 3 floors, and let's say there's 20 classrooms per floor, so there's 60 floors.
So 60 classrooms? Great. Okay. And you've got 16 into 1,500. I didn't really know this. I used to know there. Okay, perfect. So it's 25 people per classroom. I used to be able to do it on top of my head. Very interviews. Okay. So we've got 25 people per classroom. My next question for you is we want to look at the percentage fill rate of each classroom. On average, how many seats are in a Huntsman Hall classroom?
75.
75?
It's a good number.
Thank you. I was like, do you hate me? No. Okay. So, we've got 25 over 75. What does that look like in percentage terms? Good. How can we make that easier? Better than 25. So 33.33% fill rate in each classroom. So that literally went from the entire population of 10 down to where you're sitting. So that is a top down. We're going to flip it around and do bottoms up, but we're going to use some different variables just to show you that there's a lot of ways to look at this. Does anyone have any other questions before we move on to the other way? Yes.
Are we discounting the fact that students might be in GSR?
That's a fantastic thing that you could add, right? There's so much detail that you could add to these, but I thought what we did, frankly, was a really, really good way of looking at a fairly nebulous question and breaking it down in an organized and funneled manner. I hope this is actually for, it is, okay. Okay. So, do we want to do Huntsman again from bottoms up, or do we want to pick something different? There's a couple of different ones on there.
Before too many people leave, I'm gonna do the administrative bit real
Yes,
quick.
go for it.
How many of you received emails from Jingy?
Oh, here, I'll get to this
Consulting.
one too.
Okay, through Handshake, make sure, yeah, you might.
Yeah, right here. And then there's 2 more behind it. I have the
I want you to
pictures
see
you
how
sent
many
me.
Handshake to sign up for the newsletters. you can go up into your name, drop down to career interests, and then from there you can fill out, like, do you want a job or an internship, what do you want to do, geographic. Then select any category below to receive targeted career mail communications. It's by industry, select as many as you'd like, consulting is one of them. Through that, Ginny will start emailing you. Many of you raised your hands, so that's great. But in terms of timing, deadlines can be expected to be in September for full-time, mid-September through mid-October for internships. It will be literally maybe even the first day of classes, there will be info sessions. Career fairs are that first, they're the second week as well. So be keyed in as soon as you get back for both internships and full-time. The employers will kind of combine visits. But do keep an eye out on your email. Gingy, if there's updates, I can say specifically that Oliver Wyman did go early last year. They were opened in the middle of the summer. There's also an opportunity. I know Kate wisely keeps saying practice, practice, practice. There are consulting groups that you can set up. There's peer-to-peer. There will be information about getting matched into a peer group through Gingy's emails. I know I sound like a broken record. Gingy's emails will be very helpful, including that peer-to-peer opportunity to get together in case in a group.
Is it the same thing as the career mail?
It is, so wait, what is the same?
The Gingy.
Gingy's email is a career mail. Gingy sends out the consulting career mail. Great clarification. Thanks.
Okay, everyone, I know some people have to leave, they have dinner, do classes. If people want to stay and do another one of these from bottom up, happy to do it. Also just happy to answer questions if you would rather do that right now in the last couple of minutes. Bottom up? Okay, and then I'll stay and answer questions. Okay, so bottom up, do we want to do the same Huntsman or do we want to do how much money does SoulCycle make? Do you guys want SoulCycle? We could do coffee Starbucks sells or cheeseburgers at McDonald's. What do you guys, what sounds good?
Let's do the same one with
Okay.
Hudson Hall.
Awesome. Perfect. Let's do a bottom-up Huntsman Hall. Okay. So my first question is, how many seats are in the classroom? We don't need to say this. 100 seats. Great. I love using 150 and 45. I'm going to structure this a little bit differently, because this is going to be one very long multiplication problem. Okay, and now, what do we need to know about those seats in the classroom, like this right now? What is our fill rate? Right now it's significantly lower, people have dinner. So now we're going to do a fill rate. You'll also hear this called like utilization. What do you think our fill rate in our seats is going to be? Let's use easy numbers. What one do you want to use? Brilliant. This is probably actually pretty close to what's happening. Okay. Times number of classrooms, right? Would that be our next one? We're building up, right? We're building up the building of Huntsman. Okay, how many classrooms do you want to use?
50.
Brilliant. Now, if we were not time constrained, I'd probably push you guys for really, really good assumptions. I know you guys can come up with great assumptions. These are actually pretty good. Okay, so now we have number of classrooms. What does this tell us? What number do we currently have on here? It's important to understand what we're calculating. Yes?
With the seats filled in a classroom.
Mm-hmm. In Huntsman. Great. So now, this is seats filled, which tells us how many students, right? So now, let's think about the rest of the people that work in Huntsman, right? So floors 4 through 8, correct? Okay, so that's faculty, staff. How do we want to think through those floors? We could do it by offices, we could do it by departments, yes?
Just to clarify, the
Yes.
fill rate of like the students in the classroom as like that would be taking into account like the time of day and all that other
so we're
stuff.
resolving the 10:30 a.m.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, wasn't clear. Okay. Yes. So now how do we want to think through all the people that work here? No wrong answer, yeah.
Like number of offices per floor.
Great. Okay, so we're gonna have 4 floors, and how many offices do we think we have? space. Does that make sense? I've actually never been up there. 10's fine. And now, do you think there are any other people up there that are maybe working in bullpens or whatnot, or do you want to leave it here? It's totally up to you guys.
That's fine.
We could add in like 10 maintenance workers to make it 50.
Great. Aha, you've caught on. Make it easy. So 40 is 10. We've got 50 staff. We've got 100 times 50 is 50 times 50, 5. This is 5 times 5 times 10 to the second. That's really sloppy, sorry guys. Times 10 to the second, right? Because this is 5 times 5, or sorry. 5 times 10 times 5 times 10. Much easier to break it out as 25 with 2 zeros. So 2,500 students. Notice that that was a very different number than what we came up with in terms of students. So our total is 2,550. But that's okay. We use logical assumptions, and there's going to be a magnitude of error. The point of a market sizing is not to be perfect, it's to make intelligent decisions and think in a structured manner while supporting your assumptions. So that is a bottom, bottom up, yeah.
I have a more general question for these market sizing problems. Like, how much in depth should you go? Because like even now it's like, oh, like what if like 5% of the staff are like sick or like something like that? Like, if you don't go in that much depth, should you like tell them like, oh, I considered X, Y, Z, but like for the sake of this problem, I decided to like not come.
Yeah, you can say, you know what, I'm assuming that all of the staff is here today. In reality, yes, there will be absences, but for the simplicity's sake, I'm going to assume this. Just be clear on what you're assuming, and if they push you on your assumptions, be able to support it. So when we go back to these problems, when you guys are walking past Pret, how many salads does Pret on campus, both upstairs and downstairs, sell in a day? That's a great question. How much money does SoulCycle make nationally, right? SoulCycle down in Rittenhouse, they're the cycling bar. They've got multiple locations. Let's say they have 20 locations, and they have 10 classes a day at each location. What do you think their revenue profile looks like? Take it one step further. What do you think their cost structure looks like as a result of their business model? What is their profit? These are all things that you can start thinking through. Cheeseburgers and McDonald's. This is a classic market sizing case that I would absolutely recommend you guys tackle. Yes.
When you say cost structure, can you define that?
So when we think about SoulCycle, let's walk through the business, right? You enter the doors. You have a variable cost. You have a lady at the front desk, and she's going to be checking you in or billing you if you don't show up, right? Then we're going to walk into SoulCycle, and there's going to be a lot of fixed costs. They're going to give you shoes. They're going to give you a towel. They're going to have laundry costs associated with cleaning those shoes and those towels. Then you're going to walk into the studio. I'm literally walking through SoulCycle. And there's going to be rows and rows and rows and rows of lights and technology and speakers. All of that is a fixed cost. It costs money, right? And then you have this amazing instructor on the front that's going to help you torch 500 calories. There is a cost associated. They have to be paid. Now let's step back. We're the instructor. I have a whole stadium of riders. Maybe I have 100 seats. Maybe it's 6 a.m. and only 75% of those are full, but SoulCycle is wildly expensive. And it costs 25 or maybe 30 or maybe 40. I don't know, I haven't been dollars per class. Whoa. Yeah, I'm an MBA. So it's $40 per class times all those riders. And now I have an idea of how we're making money, how dollars are going out at the Rittenhouse SoulCycle. And I'm going to extrapolate that to New York, to Chicago, to LA, to Atlanta, to Miami, and wherever else we think that there is a location, we can also assume that all of them are the same. So put yourself in the business, walk through it, write them down. Understand if they're variable, they change with like number of riders or number of people, or they're fixed, they paid for it, it's some cost. Right? Okay. So, Any other general questions?
Would a market sizing question be like the ultimate answer, or would we use our conclusion from this part to like pull through to the ultimate conclusion that like the case is trying to get us at?
So great question. You could have an entire case that's market sizing, right? And you are thinking about investing, here's a good one, a theme park. That's gonna have tons of initial investment costs. You're gonna have tons of fixed costs, so like electricity, right? And licenses for all of the things you wanna sell, if it's Disney themed. It could be, what is the potential market to visit my theme park? You could also maybe consider entering a new market. Maybe you're trying to launch in the Lake Sales cycle, and it's part of your go versus no-go decision because you need to be able to capture enough customers to hit your break even. So you'll see how a lot of these things are very interrelated as you continue to work through cases.
I have just two general questions. How early do you think we should start like preparing for these kind of case interviews, like summer for junior year, or like how far in advance? And then second, how like are these slides going to be sent out to us through like Jeannie's emails, or is like somebody else going to send them?
I can send these slides out to everyone who attended, so if you checked in, I'll email them. But Ginny will be sending out that book that Kate's preparing.
In terms of preparation, a couple things. It's kind of about your existing baseline, right? And the cases that you need to do to feel comfortable. Obviously right now I would say is not the time to prepare. Interviews are very quick though after you do get back from Canvas. So, you know, maybe it is a beginning of August type thing where you're like, okay, I'm home after my internship, I've got a couple hours every night, and I just start reading this and I start doing case starts by myself, which we'll walk through likely in an email and definitely in the larger book. I'm gonna work on my math, I'm gonna work on my mental math, I'm gonna work on my fractions and simplification. Then I'm going to start working through cases with a case buddy. I'm gonna try to do 3 a week and make that your goal. And it's not only doing the case with someone, it's getting the feedback, looking at the answer key, because these cases all have an answer key, and deliberately understanding what you need to improve on for your next case of that type. And so it might take you an hour to do a case, it might take you an hour to give a case, and it might take you an hour to review it on your own. But quality is definitely the focus, not quantity.
And where would we find these case slides?
So we're building them now. You can always come in and mock with us. There's also a ton of case, like you could buy Case in Point. There's there's the Vault Career Insider, which is a free case. I think that setup is not the best. It's a lot of text, but once you get to this level, there's some good questions you could just kind of work through yourself if you're more comfortable.
Yeah.
There's others, but
There's actually a list in this. Choosing outside vendors or outside books to start looking at is very person dependent. So we're careful to recommend any specific one. I can tell you that the MBAs have David Orwell come in. They also in past years have read Case in Point. Some people swear by Victor Chang, right? So it's going to depend on your learning style and what personally clicks with you. But great question. You guys are fantastic. You guys really had some great ideas.
thanks, Kate. It was great to have an MBA immersed in the life.